Welcome to Intelligent Artifice, the podcast that helps you become a 10x performance marketer. Intelligent Artifice explores the cutting edge of the intersection of AI, creatives, and performance marketing. Every week, we deconstruct the ad systems behind high-performing advertisers using our in-house semantic analysis system, bruteforce.ai, or we sit down with top operators redefining how advertising gets done in a generative AI world. Whether you're scaling user acquisition, leading a creative team, or building a creative engine with AI, this podcast is your unfair advantage. Intelligent Artifice is hosted by me, Shamant Rao, the founder and CEO of the boutique growth marketing agency Rocketship HQ. You can find out more about us at rocketship.hq.com. Our services are ideal for advertisers spending over $50,000 a month on paid social. Check out the podcast website, intelligentartifice.net, or our newsletter, intelligentartifice.kit.com. I'm excited and thrilled to welcome Rohan Khadatkar to Intelligent Artifice.
Our guest today is Rohan Khadatkar, Head of Marketing at Insta Headshots, MagicPhotos and Magic Studio. Rohan is a growth leader with a decade of experience across edtech and creative tech. He has scaled audiences to over 100 million monthly sessions and led high-impact marketing and growth initiatives.
Rohan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shaman, for having me on the podcast. It feels really amazing talking to you on this podcast. And thank you for all the great work you have been doing with all your notes and newsletters.
Of course, thank you for the kind words. And I'm particularly thrilled to have you because you and your team have been exploring AI and AI products before it was a thing. And we're going to talk about that. I'm fascinated by how you guys approached AI well in advance of it being mainstream and have still continued that trajectory to today. And certainly would love to dive into you guys' story and everything you guys have done along the way so far. To start with, your team first started launching products in 2020. It wasn't what we now call the AI era. How did some of the early product launches shape the understanding of AI and productizing AI even before anyone had heard of ChatGPT?
Absolutely. Very interesting. So I think what happened, Shamant, is our goal was to actually build products which an end user can solve problems with, which is the fundamental of product building. That's how everyone thinks about it. And that fundamental still remains today. Now, if you take up very complex products are there, but finally it is the product managers or the builders thinking which kind of reduces the scope and makes it so dead simple that the end user understands it, gets it, and is able to use it. Now, that's the point from which we started. So it's not the tech first, the product later, the use case, the customer comes first, and then what do you build for them? And the initial entry point which we had, the team had, was in the Shopify ecosystem. The ecosystem was huge. It's a $200 billion small, medium scale economy. The Shopify app store was growing. The Shopify industry was growing. So one of the first products which our team built was a Shopify price testing app, which was a simple problem which you said that can you extract more revenue out of your pricing decisions for the products which you put on an e-commerce store, which is the basis of the Shopify world. And it simply did an A/B testing live while you were streaming and gets you the perfect prices for the products which you were doing. I think the next product, which was Hagrid.io, it's still live. It's a social Q&A for any website. That's what the second thing. The third thing, what we built was Mustard, which was Pinterest has all these images of products which you can build, but they are not shopping. This was an attempt to actually list down all the products and make them shoppable. And I think the stat is only 4% of the products which Pinterest shows are. If you like something, you can still go and shop. Another very big use case which kind of came because of our AI team really being on top of all the technological innovations which are happening in 22 was Magic Eraser, which was a product which could remove objects from images. That became so popular out of overnight that when we launched on Product Hunt, that we were personally surprised that there is so much demand for some of these very simple products. It just does one thing, but just does that one thing really well. It still ranks number one for the keyword Magic Eraser. Super competitive keyword, and that's what we keep realizing every time. One of the other fun products I would say which we built was a photo booth inside Magic Studio, which was a simple attempt at making cartoon or avatar face. If I could put you in the Wild West looks, what I put you in the Cybertron 100 years, 1,000 years ahead of time, which also became an inspiration for Insta Headshot, which is technically real headshots in the data. It all comes down not thinking AI, but thinking how can you actually build products which the end user would have to use. tools. That's what it comes down.
And I like your framing about doing one thing and doing one thing really well and having it be so simple that an end user can really comprehend and understand it. And I think that's so underappreciated when it's easy to focus on the sexy new technology. And I like that framing. Move on into talking about Insta Headshots, which was another of your experiments and products. You mentioned that with Insta Headshots, it was profitable from day one. What was the inspiration for the product in the first place? What was the initial experience and what offered the conviction that this was actually scalable?
Absolutely. What happened with Insta Headshots is, first of all, again, kudos to our AI team. I think they just are abreast of all the developments which keep happening in the AI world. As you all know, the technological leaps in AI are so fast that things can be missed. It's very easy to, if you tune into AI news, there is something which you are going to for sure get missed. That's one thing. So I think one of the comfort points was just access to that technology. Just reading some of those initial papers which kind of came on text to image generation. That was with ChatGPT, the text to text world was growing. At the same time, the text to image generation was picking up. So having just knowledge and access to that world allowed us to be comfortable with the idea that something like this is possible. Plus, we had that photo booth product in studio, which kind of gave us that inspiration that maybe there is something possible in this space. So we have an amazing technological leap which is coming. And I think in AI, you can clearly extrapolate that if the technology is doing something today, it will do that 100 times better in another 1 or 2 years. So the future seemed to be heading there. And we had a few products, like similar products in the space, but they were not, when we actually tested some of these products for ourselves, the comparison, the benchmarks, the facial accuracy, the uncanny valley of photos felt odd to us. Maybe if we wrap our heads together on this, we can build a better outcome than this. In fact, the first version of Insta Headshot and the outputs were better than the incumbents, for sure, from day one. And also, even today, that's the basis of all of our influence on customers, is now we are the only product today that kind of shows you headshots first and then you are asked to pay. It's not the other way around. You don't have to trust us, that you don't have to read our Trustpilot testimonials, which are already 5 stars, and then trust us to get your headshots. That inspired us to actually venture into this space. We were obviously, as a company, we had to build our revenues. We had to find products which will fly. We're doing 2-3 experiments, and this was one of them. And text to image generation leap kind of told us that this is possible. And then we said, can we build out a simple product? We just built one landing page, a 3-step process, just added a Stripe paywall from our older products. It was not even calling Insta Headshots then. It was called Magic Studio Stripe. And then we just wrapped this up together and launched it on Product Hunt and started a simple Google ads. I think the first $100, I remember customer already coming in, and I knew that if there is so much pickup on the first day itself, I think you can make a profitable model in like less than 30 days from there.
Sure. Very interesting. And you did briefly mention that one of the things that drove a lot of this was the fact that your team was on top of the changes in the AI world, which was already very fast-paced. What were some of the tech changes or the changes in the models that made the kinds of changes possible that weren't possible before? You mentioned Stable Diffusion. What were some of the other technical changes that made things possible that weren't possible before?
Absolutely. So there's so much technical stuff to know in this, Shaman. But if I just simply want to explain this, now ChatGPT, very easy to explain. It's text to text. You enter a prompt, which is a text input, and then you get an amazing text output back, which enables your thinking. And then you just extrapolate this text to text. You can actually do text to image, text to voice, text to music. There is so much happening in the world today in this space. Now, in the text to image world, one of the first seminal papers which came in was the ability to actually describe an object and be able to just get that same image on the other side. This was the first key research breakthrough. The leap forward from this was the ability to actually make it photorealistic, as if you felt that there's a real apple if you just described an apple in the text input. And the big breakthrough which came in, which made the headshot generation possible, which is the identity of the person possible, is basically make a standard model which is already there and input an identity of a person with very few number of images, just a handful of images, just 8 or 10 images. And then you can take like a SD model and then train it on an identity. It can be my identity, it can be your identity, it can be any third person identity. But I just take a handful of images and then get that model to learn that this is an identity of a person for which you have to generate a model. So that became the drive over which the 2023 world of headshot generation became possible. There's a lot of work to do even then, because you had to give the right handful of images. It can't be anything. Plus, you had to, the first limitation of SD models was it could do only 512 pixels cross 512 pixels. And that's not really useful for the end user. You had to do a lot of upscaling, a lot of post-processing to actually make that headshot usable for the user. So there were a lot of workflows before the model inputs, there were a lot of workflows after the model inputs, which made the resemblance better, the resolution better, the in-painting better. If you had artifacts in the input images, you had to remove all of them and then give the right inputs to get best outputs. Finally, the real test is, does the user like it and does the user look like the input? That's the test which you're trying to pass every time with this user. The 2024, it was a major leap forward with the Flux models coming into the picture, where the size of the models completely increased. And the easiest way to give the analogy is what GPT-5 is able to do today versus what GPT-3 was able to do a few years back. And everybody understands what that quality is between what GPT-5 is able to think through your problems independently. It can do deep thinking. GPT-3 was able to write ad copies of which you had to choose one. So that's the leap which came in 24. Flux models come into the picture, which kind of increase the size of the model and I remember just launching that model into our workflows, halved and got the refund rates 50% down overnight, because that was so amazing to see, because just these tech leaps, what they can do in a business funnel. So the focus shifted to, because the model was itself so capable, that the focus shifted to pre-processing, not post-processing. So how can you train the identity of a person really well? How can you pick the person's face? How can you even reduce the hardness which you had while people were inputting images? People they will put their marriage photos in which there are a group of people in the photos also. So we had to actually isolate the person out of that and then get that thing as the perfect input. And today, I think the problem still remains the same. How can you even improve those identities? How can you give more control to the user? Now, we know from our work of last 2 years that the customer wants a specific outfit. They want to see themselves in turtlenecks. They want to see themselves in navy blue blazers, if that's their favorite color. They want to see themselves in long hair, which are red, right? There are people who want specific things about their hair. They want a specific brand color of their company as the background. Right. They want the logo of their companies on the t-shirts which they're wearing in it. So today's problem is, how can you bring more control to the end customer? And the big thing which can completely change this industry is, can you completely get away with model training? Because you train a model which takes time, which is the cost center. Can you completely get away with that? Which is what Nano Banana and all of these things are doing today. So still very far from facial accuracy, but giving us the inspiration where the world is headed.
And I love the way you encapsulated the history of image processing, if you will. And I think what's underappreciated by many, including myself, is how critical the concept of identity is in all of this. If the model can look at 10 images and say, this is Rohan, and I think that the confidence level which it can say that, I think, can be the most important pieces in all of this, it seems like.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think the other meta point I'm also inferring from a lot of this is, I think model wrappers can be a bit of a dirty word in a lot of media, if you will. They're like, oh, it's just a GPT wrapper, it's just an image wrapper. But I think everything you're talking about just talks about how non-intuitive it is to build a wrapper on top of it. And again, I've written code and I've built products based on vision models, by no means as sophisticated as something you're doing, but I think it was very quickly I could see that writing a simple Python code is not the same as having an end-to-end workflow that actually gives meaningful results. And I think that's something that a lot of people underappreciate it still. Which brings me to my next question. In terms of productizing what would seem like a model that's ready to go, but not really, if you look much more closely. So one of the things that I see that your team's doing really well is taking a lot of these models and customizing them to fit use cases. Can you walk us through what your team's approach is to productizing a model so the product works in practice for users?
Absolutely. Great question. I think the best way to explain this is an analogy, which I actually got from some of my team members, is, are you building a road to get the user from A to B, or are you building a vehicle? User has to go from these uncharted territories between A and B. So it is a jungle. The user can himself walk through to the other side. You can build a road and on which the user can go, or you can actually build a bicycle, which makes only sense for short distance, which is solving a small small problem. You can also build a bus, which is the enterprise version of the problem. Or you can build a vehicle, which is the user can sit in the vehicle and then. So roads are basically your foundational models. So very hard to build, very high infrastructure costs. And it does not make sense if you make just half the road between A and B. It has to be the full road. It can't be half done because that's how it is. But vehicles can do a lot more in this. So we are actually building the vehicles which are used on these roads from taking the user from A to B. That's best way to say this. And I would still come back to the fundamental in this case, that you have to work backwards from the use case in this case. You cannot say that there's a stable diffusion model or there's a flux model which is available, but you find the user will only pay, or the idea will make economic sense only when there's a problem getting solved or there's a value getting added. That still remains the same. So you think backwards from what the user wants and say that, is there something available today is in all the research that I can use to make this problem solvable, and also anticipate what the user might have in the future. For example, so now the question is about how to give more control. This is something which we have been anticipating since a very long time as a team. We get all these customer support requests on intercom that, can you do this photo in a specific outfit? Can you do this photo with the logo on it? So that's something which you have to keep solving. The mental model in this case, I would say, roads and vehicles. And we are right now building vehicles. We would love to build roads, but it's a lot of upfront infrastructure cost, which is what OpenAI, Claude, and all of these guys are building.
I think that's a great analogy. Not everyone should build roads, but I think once you know what the user wants, how can you build the right vehicle for them?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And you talked about some of the constraints and challenges. For instance, you said somebody could be in a group photo in a wedding, and the model has to really pick out the right person in the photo. And you had a lot of limitations like this, even when the models were not quite ready, especially 1 or 2 years ago. And I understand that you guys rejected user uploads that didn't meet certain quality standards. Why was this important, and what changed as the models evolved?
Got it. So I think one of the fundamentals here is actually part of the product building exercise. What as a team we have realized is that we have to protect the outputs from the user itself a lot of times. Now, a very simple example would be that you just cannot tell the user back that bad inputs cost bad output. This argument won't work because the outputs are already here, and then it is going to be a pointing game that it was your tech or your product which did not deliver. But fundamentally, the model will work only when there are great inputs will give great outputs. That's the circular problem, the circular argument in this case. Now, one of the very important things initially when you're trying to earn the customer trust is the outcomes. Finally. So you have to have great outcomes, without which there is no word of mouth, there is no marketing, there is no conversion rates, and there is no hype about your product. The constraints which were set in the product were fundamentally for the reason that the outcomes were amazing. Initially, the kind of feedbacks and the kind of Trustpilot testimonials that we got initially, there was always a wow factor in this space. When I looked at my headshots, they were just amazing compared to if you read some of our competitors' reviews, they talk about speed, they talk about ease of the product, but the wow factor is where it tips the odds in your favor. Initially, the models were also not very mature, the fundamental models. We had to be really strict about, we could only have front-facing images, we could only have a single person in the images, there cannot be any hats, there cannot be any glasses on it, and we needed 12 images, which seems like a huge number. One of the jokes which kind of goes on is men do not have any input images for them to upload, and they always have this photo from their wedding in which they are putting their hands around the necks, and that's the only photo they have, and they have to crop it out and put it on LinkedIn. That's a problem which we have from users. I think that was the limitation of that tech, but I think today, we are always in the pursuit of reducing this, but not to compromise the final outcomes. We want those outcomes to be amazing. The user should get blown away when they see photos. And I think today's models have made that possible. We are much, much less restrictive. In fact, the product flow today allows people to get their headshot with very easy input check. I think we allow people to actually look at their headshots first and then take a decision best and get the credit card out. So today we are doing that, and that kind of is solving, and we are on that path.
Very cool. And sometimes you just have to protect a user from themselves just because they only care about the outcome. And if they don't have the right inputs, you just have to say no sometimes. And I think the hard thing about that is it will hurt your conversion rates. And that's the trade-off, which I don't think is ever easy. And it's great that you guys went ahead and made that trade-off. Yeah. And there are so many models available, just even within text to image. The end user doesn't want to know or see see what models being used. In fact, they don't care. So how do you guys think about under the hood, which models to use and which ones to be testing on an ongoing basis for different use cases?
Got it. So I think our AI team is always on the lookout for a better model. There are so many models available today on text to image. So we keep reading all these research papers which coming out. What are the models which got launched, getting early accesses to the text to image model and trying out. In fact, also think the product building process on a modular, right? So can you use one model for a specific outcome or part of the workflow, or can you find another model for another part of the workflow? Kind of comes together really well.
You were talking about choosing the right model, and I think you were pretty much done that. So much like GPT wrappers, much like model wrappers, another word that gets a bit of a bad rap is prompting and prompt hacking, if you will. But that is so critical in many ways. So how did you and your team realize how important that was? And can you share any examples of the right prompt or the wrong one made a huge difference in outcome?
Got it. Makes sense. So I think I just feel bad that prompting is a bad rap, because I think what prompt is basically, it's a way of communicating with the model. It's the language which everybody will have to learn going into the client, because you will be working with AI model. And how to think about this is how our AI team explains it is, first of all, you have to be clear that what you care about in the outcome, and how do you communicate that to the model, and the model will understand what you care about. That's the bridge of the prompt, which is, so I think it will come by practice, because you have to learn the language by speaking it. That's how it will be done. And I think language models, when I say the chat GPTs, the Claudes of the world, because of all the AI research has gone through, and they're the first ones which came into the world, they are very mature. You can get away with a very relaxed prompt, and you are lazy about writing the prompt, and you will still get amazing outputs. But the text to image models, they are not there yet. Like, you have to be very explicit about what you want. And because the dimension of text is just one dimensional, the image is multidimensional. The same prompt can have 100 different outputs, which could still make sense and have similarity with the prompt. One of the amazing problems we had initially was that when I think navy blazer, I always keep coming back to that. It's a very popular style on a product. And what used to happen is, when we wrote only navy blazer in the prompt, the model in much instances will technically put a navy military jacket onto the user, which is not what you intend. But just an entry of one word, when you say navy blue blazer, it did the job 100% of the times as expected. The specificity which you want to get in the prompting and learn that when you are working with text to image models. It will even be more common when you work with text to voice, text to music. They are more varied in that way. I think it all comes down to testing. This is the job of an AI engineer, rigorously testing all the prompts, figuring out how many times the outcome is coming as expected. And you can't get away with this flow. You have to do this to actually get the product. So that's the incremental value add which we do as a team when we build that, as I explained, is what is that incremental value add? This is the value add which we do. You don't care about the model, but we will think about the model. We will think about the pre-processing. We'll think about the post-processing. We'll think about prompting. We'll get you what you want, but you don't have to think about all the steps before that.
100%. And again, in my own experience building much smaller products, just a system prompt just made a day and night difference. We have a video intelligence software that we use, that I've written and we use, and just the system prompt makes day and night difference, because without the right system prompt, it would just literally describe what's in a video, why this is relevant to marketing, why this is converting well. And that took way longer than I anticipated that it would, because I assumed the coding would take the most of the time, but getting the system prompt right was just so much harder. And I think I fully agree, that is so much underappreciated. And not everyone is technical, and yet it's very critical for everyone to use AI in their workflows, especially in an AI first team such as yours. What are some of the things that you and your team do to make sure everyone is current and using AI day to day?
In fact, with all the hype which is going on in AI, we are always signing up for all of this. We see something new, I think one of the team members will sign up and see what it can do. For me, it will be marketing side tools. For our tech lead, it will be all the engineering tools. And we are using everything, mostly engineering heavy, I would say. So we use Cursor, Claude, GPT, Gemini, Grok, every popular model for specific use cases, because I think they do few things really well, and we want to extract the great things what they do and use it for us. I think one of the important problem for people to be very comfortable with AI, I think our thinking here is that, and also for the AI products, is did they get an aha moment when they were using these products and in the first impression. That's what happens is because I think personally AI products still have to go to a trust barrier because now you're using AI to do it. So you are always answering that is the AI doing something as per my expectations? If I would do it myself, will it do all the things which I would do myself when I'm offboarding that to AI, right? So you have to fight the trust war. But I think you can tip that in the AI's favor if you get that aha moment in a small use case. That's when the adoption will happen. The people will start using that product for even more complex workflow. So it can be something like a front-end engineer writing the code. He was trying to solve this very complex syntax problem in the code, and the AI just did it in less than 2 seconds. That's an aha moment for a front-end engineer. For a marketing guy, he wrote some ad copies and they wrote some ad copies and they clicked on Google Ads. That's an aha moment for marketing guys. So I think the first shot success really matters in this case. And then if you really have to fight with the AI to actually get the outcomes, then it is not right. And a lot of stuff like that in the world today that you have to really extract the output which you need, but then you will do it for once or twice. Like mid-journey. What I think about it, you have to wrestle with the Discord server to actually get the right outputs, not like simple models like art generation.
And 100%, right? And it's not always easy. You have to just stay in the deep end, really, to keep getting the hang of this. On the marketing front, something that surprised me that around what you told me in preparation for this recording was that even though you guys are an AI product and are AI first, on the marketing front, there are ways where you rely on human context setting and editing to ensure that the messaging is authentic. Talk to me about that, why that is important, and if possible, if you could give some examples for people to understand.
I think one of the really important pieces is that, which is still true today while using AI, is the context. What matters to you? What is your mental models about what outcomes you want? What is the thing? What are the two things before that? What are the two things after that? Right? That's the context which the AI needs to know, which is where things change. And things when you're writing copy and when you're writing things for brand and marketing, that context is really critical. The same line, maybe you can use it on the home page, but it won't make sense as another page on the same site. Maybe the same line which makes sense on the home page won't make sense for a line in the newsletter. So one of the very important pieces is we love to write. In fact, this is our founder Vinod who does this really well, is that he will actually get the engineering team to build out the page. Then on staging environments, he will actually change the HTML of the site, literally put the copy there and say, how does the copy look? Sometimes a great copy which sounds really well on a notepad won't look great when you put it on the landing page. So that's the human context, which is really critical in nailing your copy, your brand voice. And I think I saw this really working well in our team. In fact, Harry Dry did this newsletter. I follow him really well. Amazing insights on copy. And he also did this YouTube video where he said that writing the copy in the context is where you will do the work, because those constraints are really important.
100%. And that is also something that's very underappreciated, especially after AI, because it's so easy to just take outputs right out of GPT or your AI models and use it directly. I think it's underappreciated how much difference the context itself can make. And as you also said, I think it's not just for copy, but also for code, also for products. Having that context in mind makes all the difference. And that's my most frequent answer to whether AI will take all our jobs. I don't think that context, that taste, if you will, can be embedded into AI yet. Not just yet. Ask me after AGI is here, but I think for now, it's still very critical to set that context.
Absolutely. Very true.
Rohan, this has been incredible. I think I really appreciate how deep you've gone in explaining some of the technical aspects, some of the historical aspects. So if I can use that phrasing for some discipline that's 4 or 5 years old, it's been incredible learning and understanding the level of nuance that goes into building AI first products. And this is perhaps a good place for us to wrap up. But before we do that, could you tell folks more about you and how they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. So I am running marketing and growth for InstaHeadshot. In fact, we are a small remote team spread between the US and India. In fact, we are now wanting to grow our team very aggressively. You can find me at Rohan at Magic Studio. I write about some of my learnings and thoughts on LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn. In fact, we are also hiring for some of offer growth leads, so paid acquisition, user acquisition leads. So if you have got amazing referrals, feel free to send in my way. And thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. And we will link to Rohan's LinkedIn and the socials in the show notes, and also some of the roles he just mentioned. Thank you again for being on Intelligent Artifice, Rohan.
Thank you, Shaman. Thanks. It's a pleasure being on this podcast.